Hey guys, welcome back to more homeowner association stories. In this video, an HOA built a community pool for the entire neighborhood on my vacant property without my permission. Let's dive right into the video. The first one is titled, "Am I the jerk for maliciously complying with HOA mailbox rules?" So my wife Juniper and I recently moved to Florida from Colorado, and let me tell you, the HOA culture here is something else entirely. Every neighborhood seems to have one, and they all act like they are running some exclusive country club rather than a regular suburban community. Our trouble started pretty much the moment we signed the papers on our new house in the HOA. The HOA president, a guy named Thaddeus Blackwood, and yes, he insists on using his full name, showed up at our door the day after we moved in with a 157-page binder full of rules and regulations. "Welcome," he said, not smiling. "I trust you will find everything you need to know about maintaining our community standards in here." He handed me the binder like he was passing down the 10 commandments. I flipped through it pretty quickly. Rules about grass height, exactly 2.5 inches, approved shades of beige for house paint, there were 27 of them, and 3 full pages dedicated to proper mailbox maintenance. Little did I know, those mailbox rules would become the center of my life for the next few months. The first week was relatively quiet. We were busy unpacking and settling in, meeting our neighbors who all seemed terrified of breaking some HOA rule and getting used to the Florida heat. Our next door neighbor Raquel, or Rachel, I'm not sure, stopped by with cookies and a warning. "Watch out for the monthly inspections," she whispered, looking over her shoulder like she was sharing state secrets. "They are especially picky about anything visible from the street." Last month, Phoenix down the block got fined because his garden gnome was an unauthorized shade of red. I laughed, thinking that she was joking, but she wasn't. 2 weeks later, I got my first violation notice. A bright yellow paper stuck in our door stating that our mailbox was insufficiently pristine and needed immediate attention. I walked out to look at it, and sure, it was not sparkly clean, but it was just normal dust from being outside. I wiped it down with a wet cloth and thought that would be the end of it. Well, nope. 3 days later, another notice. It said, "Mailbox shows signs of weathering and inadequate maintenance. Fine of $50 will be assessed if not remedied within 48 hours. I cleaned it again, this time with special white vinyl cleaner. Another notice came. "Mailbox displays unacceptable levels of oxidation on north-facing surface." At this point, I was getting annoyed. So then I bought a brand new mailbox identical to the old one and installed it. Surely this would satisfy them. The next day, Thaddeus himself showed up with his clipboard. "Mr. Harrison," he said, looking down his nose at my new mailbox, "while we appreciate your attempt at compliance, this new installation shows concerning signs of improper alignment. The post appears to be 0.3 degrees off true vertical." I stared at him. You're joking, right? "The neighborhood takes pride in maintaining the highest standards of community aesthetics. Your mailbox currently fails to meet those standards." He adjusted his bow tie. Who wears a bow tie in 90-degree weather, by the way? "You have 24 hours to correct this issue." That is when something in me snapped. Not in an angry way, but in that calm, crystal clear way when you know exactly what you need to do. "Thank you, Mr. Blackwood," I said sweetly. "I will take care of it right away." As soon as he left, I grabbed my phone and started walking. One by one, I photographed every mailbox on Magnolia Drive, Palm Court, and Orchid Lane. Missing doors, green mildew, rust spots, crooked posts, I documented it all. By the end, I had pictures of 47 mailboxes in various states of disrepair, many far worse than mine had ever been. I spent that evening creating a detailed spreadsheet categorizing each violation according to the HOA's own rulebook. Then I wrote an email that said, "Dear Mr. Blackwood and HOA board members, I appreciate your attention to maintaining our community's high standards. In the spirit of ensuring uniform enforcement of our regulations, I have attached documentation of all mailboxes in the southern section of the HOA with specific reference to sections 731 through 7347 of our HOA guidelines regarding acceptable mailbox conditions. I look forward to seeing these violations addressed with the same diligence that has been applied to my own property. As per section 142 of our bylaws, selective enforcement of regulations is strictly prohibited. Best regards, Drake Harrison." The response was immediate. My phone rang within minutes of sending the email. "Mr. Harrison," Thaddeus' voice had lost some of its usual condescension, "perhaps we should discuss this in person." "I am happy to discuss it at the next board meeting," I replied. That way all affected residents can participate in the conversation. There was a long pause. "That won't be necessary. I believe there may have been some overzealousness in our recent inspections." "Oh?" I kept my voice innocent. "So you are saying the rules don't need to be followed exactly?" Another pause. "Well, let's just say we will be reviewing our enforcement procedures." I was not done though. "Actually, I think we should discuss this at the board meeting. I took the liberty of printing copies of all my documentation for every homeowner in the neighborhood. I'm sure they would be interested in seeing how the rules are being applied here." I could practically hear him sweating through the phone. He said, "Mr. Harrison, I don't think that would be productive for our community harmony." Community harmony? I repeated slowly. Something like singling out new residents for harassment while ignoring violations by others? That hit home. The next day, every homeowner received a letter announcing a modernization of enforcement procedures and an amnesty period for existing violations. My violation notices disappeared and, mysteriously, no new ones arrived. But here is where I might be the a-hole. I did not stop there. I started a neighborhood email group where people could share their HOA experiences and help each other fight unfair violations. We began attending every board meeting, documenting every selective enforcement attempt. Eventually, enough neighbors got involved that we voted out most of the old board members, including Thaddeus. Or is it Thaddeus? I have no idea how to say that in American English. Either way, some neighbors say that I went too far, that I turned a simple mailbox dispute into a whole community uprising. And yeah, Ripe Stars, let me know what you think about this in the comments. Do you think OP was an a-hole here or not? I would definitely say that OP did the right thing here. There's no way in hell that he acted like an a-hole. I would say the HOA played stupid games and won stupid prizes. Either way, comment number 1 said, not the a-hole. HOAs are like tiny dictatorships. They only work when nobody stands up to them. You didn't just help yourself, you helped your whole community. Comment number 2, everyone sucks here. The HOA board was being ridiculous with their selective enforcement, but you did not have to turn this into a whole neighborhood revolution. Sometimes it is better to just handle things quietly instead of stirring up drama. Now everyone is fighting and property values might suffer. And let me guess, Ripe Stars, this comment was signed by Thaddeus Blackwood. That person sounds like a complete busybody. The next one said, "You are the a-hole. HOAs exist to maintain property values and community standards. You basically started a witch hunt against volunteers who were just trying to keep our neighborhood nice." Our neighborhood. Interesting. And now we have relaxed standards and I already see people letting things slip. Comment number 4, everyone sucks here. The old board was too strict, but you went nuclear over a mailbox. You could have worked within the system to change things gradually instead of causing all this chaos. Both sides handled this immaturely. Update to the story, it's been 6 months since the board changed. My HOA is actually a nice place to live now. We still have rules, but they are reasonable and fairly enforced. Today has moved to a gated community across town. Apparently they have 322 pages of rules there, and that means he will be happy. And the next one is the title story, which is titled HOA built a community pool for the entire neighborhood on my vacant lot without my permission. And by the way, if you enjoy the HOA stories and have watched until here, please don't forget to write a comment and subscribe to the channel if you want to support me. Thank you so much for your amazing support. It is very much appreciated. So a few years ago, I had the chance to buy an empty lot in a small town in South Africa. At the time, it felt like a smart investment. Land here does not lose much value, not when it is this close to the city, but still quite enough to hear the wind rustling through the trees. I did not have any immediate plans for it when I first bought it though. But now that several years have gone by, I was finally making plans to build a family compound on it. I was very close with my family, and it was my dream to have all of us together on one piece of property in our own little spaces. I had family members that were originally from South Africa, but I had made the move. I loved it here and related to the culture more than anything. I wanted to embrace my South African roots and stay close to my family. The property itself was not anything too special. I mean, after all, it was an empty lot. However, it did have a beautiful purple jacaranda tree on it. These were popular in South Africa, but I had the only one on the street. When I pictured our family compound, I pictured the tree being a beautiful centerpiece in a shared yard. The neighborhood around the property has changed since then. When I first bought the land, there was not an HOA, just a handful of houses and a lot of open space. But over time, an HOA moved in piece by piece, wrapping its rules and regulations around every new homeowner like a noose. The neighborhood was becoming more developed. Fortunately for me, my lot was exempt. No fees, no meetings, no nosy letters about what I could or could not do with my property. I thought that made me untouchable. Well, I was wrong. It was a sunny Friday when I found out. I'd been driving back from a meeting in town when I decided to take the long way back to the property. I wanted to check on the lot just to see how it was holding up since we were planning to start the beginning stages of our family compound. As I rounded the corner, I almost slammed on the brakes. There was no mistaking it. A blue, gleaming pool stretched across the middle of my property. Not just a pool though, decking, changing rooms, fencing, the whole thing looked nearly finished, complete with construction workers standing around chatting like they did not have a care in the world. For a moment I just sat there staring. Surely I had taken a wrong turn. This could not be my land. But well, it was. The jacaranda tree on the edge of the property, the one I always thought gave it character, was still there, half its roots dug up to make way for the pool. My land, my tree, and someone else's project sprawled all over it. Surely this had to be some kind of mistake. I got out of the car, anger bubbling up so fast I felt like I might explode. One of the workers noticed me and waved like I was supposed to be impressed. "Nice, isn't it?" he called out. "Gonna be the best community pool in the area." Community pool? My lot was not part of their community, at least not the way the HOA defined it. I had not signaled a single document tying me to their rules or anything, let alone giving them permission to build anything on my property. And yet here they were, digging up my land like it was theirs to do with as they pleased. Besides, how were they allowed to build a pool on a property that was not even theirs? As much anger as I had in me, I refrained but saying anything. It was not the construction workers' fault anyway, someone else was behind all of this. The next morning, I drove straight to the HOA's office. My hands gripped the wheel so tight I thought my knuckles might burst through my skin. The anger still swirled in my chest, but beneath it, there was something else, a sick, heavy feeling that settled in my stomach. At this point, I started thinking about the financial loss this could cost me. Even if it was a mistake, which I highly doubted, it would still cost a lot to undo everything, get the right permits, etc. If it were too much, it could cost me and my family our dream of building our own home. When I arrived, I barely noticed the slate glass and steel exterior of the HOA office. I was too focused on the matter at hand, the pool they had dumped on my property, without so much as a warning. I marched straight to the receptionist's desk, slamming my palms down. "I need to speak to someone in charge, now." The receptionist looked up, unimpressed, and pointed to a closed office door behind her. "You can speak to Karen. She's the president of the HOA. Please wait here." I did not bother sitting though. I stood in the middle of the lobby, waiting like a ticking time bomb. Moments later, Karen Thompson appeared. She wore a professional smile, but I could see the arrogance in her eyes. None of these HOA people radiated that beautiful culture of South Africa that I knew. It was such a shame. "Good afternoon, how can I help you?" Her tone was as polite as a politician, but it did not reach her eyes. I did not waste time with pleasantries. "I want to know why you've built a pool on my property without any of my permission." Karen didn't even flinch and says, "Ah yes, the pool." She smiled like she was doing me a favor. "We have decided to improve the area. You will be pleased to know it will increase property values for everyone, including yours." I blinked, stunned by the casual dismissal. Increase my property values? You are building a pool on land that is not even part of the HOA. How is that improving anything? "Well, you're technically right about that, but it is part of the bigger picture," she replied with a smug smile. "The community is growing and we are doing what is necessary to make it better for everyone. This is not just about you, you know, it's about the neighborhood." "But it's not your property to build on," I snapped, fighting to keep my voice steady. "Let's be clear, it is mine and you had no right to do this. You did not ask for my consent and frankly, I don't want this pool there." Karen's smile widened as if I were a child throwing a tantrum. "We are improving the neighborhood and frankly, you should be grateful. Think of the increase in value. Think of how much better it will be for everyone around here, including you." She crossed her arms, clearly expecting me to back down. "I did not ask for any of this," I said, trying to keep my tone controlled, though I could feel the heat rising again. "The pool does not belong here and you are overstepping your boundaries." She leaned back in her chair, an air of superiority emanating from her. "I understand this is a bit of a surprise, but you will see, once it is done, you will thank us. Trust me, you will be glad that we took the initiative." It was maddening. The sheer entitlement in her voice, she had absolutely no remorse, and she also did not even seem to care that she did something wrong. She was not going to back down from this, that's for sure. She spoke as though this was a service that I'd been begging for, not a direct violation of my property rights. I knew they were used to getting their way, but this was beyond arrogance. "Karen," I said, trying to steady my voice, "this is my land. You don't get to make decisions for me, and you certainly don't get to build on my property. I'm demanding that you stop construction immediately." She raised an eyebrow, as if my words were nothing more than a fleeting annoyance. "I'm afraid that's not gonna happen. Construction is already underway and the project is almost complete. The pool is a community asset, and as part of the HOA, we are within our rights to improve the area. You're gonna benefit from this, whether you like it or not." I could not believe what I was hearing here. They were building a pool on my land and somehow I was supposed to be grateful. "You have overstepped," I said, my voice low and dangerous. "And if you don't stop, I will take legal action." Karen's expression did not change. She smiled that same infuriating smile. "I think you will find that we have a lot of legal backing for this. You might want to think carefully before you take this any further." Her tone was cold, almost dismissive. "The HOA has deep connections in the community and we have consulted with the right people. We are doing what is best for everyone." "Connections?" I asked, barely containing my fury. "You are telling me that you have done this with the approval of the authorities?" "Of course," she said smoothly. "We have consulted the local municipality and we are following all the necessary procedures. Besides, the pool is gonna be a valuable addition for everyone in the area, including you. You can still build in your lot, but now thanks to us, it will be more valuable with the pool." After my encounter with Karen, I felt a mix of fury and helplessness that lingered long after I left the HOA office. I knew I could not just walk away, I could not let them get away with this blatant violation, but I was not about to take the typical route, filing a lawsuit that could drag on for months or worse, get swept under the rug with some bureaucratic excuse. I was not a lawyer or a politician, but I knew how to think on my feet. And that is when it hit me. I started with research. The HOA's entitlement had blindsided me, but the more I thought about it, the more I realized how they operated, overconfident, acting like they owned everything. I had bet money that they never bothered to look up the finer details about land use, especially not in this part of town, so I dove into the municipal zoning regulations, focusing on the very sections that might trip them up. The legalities of land ownership in South Africa are often tricky, and I had a hunch that the HOA's oversight might have been a bit more careless than they even realized. One evening, I found a little-known clause in the bylaws about construction work. No construction work shall commence on a property without written consent from the owner of the adjacent land. It was one of those regulations that most people overlooked. I was not sure if they thought I would be ignorant of it, but I was not. My lot might not technically be part of the HOA, but it was adjacent to the neighborhood that they controlled, and that little clause gave me a solid foothold. If they had not gotten my consent for the construction, which they had not, they had just bulldozed onto my property like it was a vacant lot on their own land, and then they were violating local laws. With the regulation in hand, I wasted no time. The next morning I marched down to the local municipality office. I was armed with documents, proof of ownership, and the relevant bylaws. The clerk at the counter gave me a polite nod, but her eyes widened when I handed her the papers. I even included the layouts and plans of our family compound. "This is serious," she said. "We will need to investigate this. If it checks out, construction will have to stop immediately." It felt good. No, actually it felt great to see someone finally take me seriously. The clerk assured me that the authorities would investigate it, but it would take a few days for the investigation to be processed. As she gave me an official document of my report, I left with a growing sense of satisfaction. They had underestimated me. I launched a social media campaign. I created a few anonymous profiles across platforms, Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and began posting about the situation. At first, I kept it simple. Photos of the construction site, the bulldozers digging into my land, and a short message about the unauthorized pool being built on property that did not belong to the HOA. I kept the tone factual, but I was precise. I included all the relevant details, and soon the post spread like wildfire. The first comment I got was from a neighbor I had not met before, then another and another. Isn't this illegal? I thought this area was not part of the HOA. I want to know who authorized this. And within a couple days, local news outlets had caught wind of the story. I made sure to contact a few reporters and provided them with all the documentation to back up my claims. The HOA's actions, building on someone's private land without permission, were a legal nightmare in the making. The more people learned about it, the more the tide turned against the HOA. In one particularly satisfying moment, a local news segment covered the story, interviewing a few residents who were furious at the HOA's overreach. The backlash was swift. Karen, the self-assured president, started to look less like the invincible leader of the neighborhood and more like a villain. I watched as she did an interview with the local news, her forced smile barely covering her discomfort as the reporter asked tough questions about the pool and the neighborhood's blatant disregard for property rights. That was the moment I knew I had them. It did not take long for the consequences to catch up with the HOA. Within a week of the news coverage and my fence, they received a formal notice from the municipality about their zoning violation. The construction had already exceeded the limits allowed by local ordinances, and now they had to stop everything. No more bulldozing, no more pool, and Karen of course tried to deny any responsibility, but when the fines started piling up and the local authorities began investigating, she had no choice but to cave in. Especially with all the proof out there. It was not just the fines, there were legal consequences too. They had to cover the cost of removing all the equipment they had brought onto my land. It was a bitter pill for them to swallow, but the worst part was that their carefully curated image as a group that was supposedly improving the neighborhood took a massive hit. Residents who had previously been loyal to the HOA were now questioning the board's judgment. I kept the pressure on by posting regular updates on social media showing the continued halt in construction and the ongoing fines. It felt good to see their reputation finally crumble. Technically, I could have forced them to remove the pool and they would have complied in the end, but I saw an opportunity to turn their blunder into something beneficial for me. The pool was already there, standing in the middle of my lot like an unwanted guest. So why not make the best of it? I contacted a contractor and arranged to have the area landscaped into a shared backyard space. I built a small retaining wall around the pool and added some tasteful outdoor furniture, palm trees, and even a few walking paths. It was not just a pool anymore, it was now a luxurious little retreat tucked away in my corner of the neighborhood. The irony of it was not lost on me. The HOA had tried to bulldoze their way through my land, but now I had a prime piece of real estate for which they had paid. I had made it mine in a way they never intended. It was not just the pool though. With the HOA distracted by the mess they had created, I was able to start planning the family compound of which I had always dreamed. I'd been waiting for the right moment to break ground, and now the time had come. I built a small cozy home for myself and my family, just a stone's throw away from the neighborhood. The plot of land that once seemed like a financial gamble now had the potential to become something great. A place where my family could thrive away from the overbearing control of the HOA. As the months passed, my family and I settled in and most of our little homes were finished and livable. Our dreams were coming true and we were able to coexist on our property. There was no better feeling than having your family right next to you after all. The HOA never fully recovered from the fallout. Karen resigned under the weight of the controversy, and with the new board came a shift in priorities. They focused more on community cohesion and less on micromanaging residents. Their power had been stripped, and with it, the grip they once had on the neighborhood. Before we end the video, I will read one last story from r/petty revenge that you don't want to miss. It is brand new. So it is titled, "Sit there laughing at me at the petrol station? I will inconvenience you even more." So this was a few years ago. I pulled into my local petrol station. All the pumps were in use, so I pulled up behind one of the pumps waiting for the van using it to finish and then move off. After quite a few minutes, the driver casually strolled out of the shop in no hurry, despite the queue at the busy forecourt, and walked to his van. He could see that I and several other vehicles were queuing to use the pumps. The van driver and the pump next to him was obviously a friend. That driver finished up and the two of them stood and had a chat. They were aware of us waiting and were clearly loving the fact that they were holding us all up. Even turning to laugh arrogantly at the guy waiting next to me who called them to move away from the pumps. This went on for 5 minutes more until they got bored of their silly game and then drove off. The moron was a plasterer and had his name and phone number written all over his van, plying his trade. Oh boy, I'm petty and I made a note of his details. A few weeks later, I called him up and said I'd bought a house in need of renovation and needed a quote to board out and skim the entire house. Oh, he was only too happy to quote for a big project, assuring me that he was great at his trade and I could not find a better quote. We discussed his availability and he was keen to come and look at the job. I gave him the address of a rundown house a few streets away from me that has recently sold at auction. He knew the property, he had driven past it a few times and noticed that it was up for auction. We arranged for him to call the following day. Of course, I was not there. He rang a few times and left a voicemail checking where I was. Eventually, I called him back very apologetic and said that my husband had fallen off a ladder and I had to take him to the A&E. He said okay, I will rearrange the visit. We rearranged another time a few days later, the next appointment came and I had 2 more messages from him clearly annoyed that I was not there again. I called him back again and apologized. I said I could totally understand his anger and wasted time. It reminded me of the time I was sat at a petrol station a few weeks ago and some idiot and his mate stood having a good old chat whilst laughing at drivers waiting to use the pumps. I heard the penny drop. That was when the raging and swearing started, which just set me off roaring with laughter. I made my point, it was fabulous. I spent the next few weeks blocking various numbers, sending abusive texts, but he got bored of that eventually. I hope he learned that actions have consequences. And yeah guys, thank you so much for watching. I will see you again tomorrow.